What's going on, FitFam? So in this video, I'm going to explain to you how to measure and track everything properly when you're preparing your food and then tracking it in MyFitnessPal. So that way you can know for sure that you are 100% on track to hit your macros, which means you're guaranteed to reach your fitness goals quickly. So this is a full day of eating that is enough food of everything I need of each of the 3 macros to hit my targets. So I have banana berry protein oats for breakfast, which I pretty much eat every single day. And then I have a lunch bowl here, which is a quinoa black bean feta cheese bowl. And then here I have peanut sauce shrimp. So I'm just gonna walk you through how you would input all of this into MyFitnessPal. So the best way to guarantee you hit your macros is making sure that you sit down, you put everything in MyFitnessPal before you actually go and eat the food. Because sometimes what people do is they'll kind of just wing it through their day and they'll measure and track as they go, and then they hope that they're just gonna be able to make it work so that they're gonna hit their macros. But obviously things can go wrong that way because you might eat too much or too little of something, and then by the end of the day your macros aren't gonna be right. So it's actually much better to sit down, put in everything you're gonna eat for the day, tweak it as you need until you make sure that it's going to hit your macros. And so you're gonna know that everything is on track for your macros by hitting that little pie chart button, and it's gonna show you the ratios of everything. It's gonna show you how many grams of protein, how many grams of fat, and how many grams of carbs you're having. So you're going to know for sure that you're hitting your macros. And remember, they don't need to be exactly 100% to the gram. You do have a little bit of wiggle room, especially with your protein and fats. They can be anywhere from about 10 grams plus or minus what they should be, but obviously you want to get it as close as possible without obsessing over it too much. All right, so when it's time to actually put the food in, you're gonna hit the add food button and you're gonna type in each individual ingredient. So I'm gonna start with my oats. So I'm gonna type in rolled oats, and then here's a little hack, because you're probably gonna see when you're searching for foods in the MyFitnessPal database that not everything is gonna have the option for you to track to the gram. So one way you can pull up the options that do have measurements to the gram is you're gonna type in the food and then you're gonna type in a G next to it. So rolled oats G is what I put. Now it's gonna pull up options that allow me to track to the gram. So I'm gonna click on this one, I'm gonna hit serving size, and I'm gonna choose 1 gram for my serving size, and then the number of servings is gonna be the number of grams that I used of that particular food item. So today I used 80 grams of rolled oats. So number of servings is 80 and the serving size is 1 gram. So now I'm just gonna go through and do that with all of my ingredients. The only ingredients that you don't need to track are things like vegetables, so your spinach, cherry tomatoes, and then things like spices and herbs, so lemons, limes, salt and pepper, and then things like garlic and onion. And the reason that you don't need to track those things is because, first of all, they're pretty much no calories at all, so it's not going to really make a big deal. But the other reason, especially with your vegetables, is that you can't overeat it. It's not like you're gonna gain a bunch of weight from eating spinach. If anything, you should be having even more of it, right? So you don't need to actually track those small things, but you want to be tracking everything else. And if you pull up a specific item and you're ever confused if maybe it's not exactly the right nutrition information, I get that sometimes, specifically with beans in MyFitnessPal. I don't know why, but I always run into issues with beans. So for this one, for the lunch, for example, I'm gonna type in black beans, and then you're gonna choose 1 gram, and I put in 150 grams. But if you're ever kind of like here, for example, it's coming up way more than I think it should be. So if you're ever confused about, maybe this nutrition information isn't gonna be quite accurate, you can always go to this website. It's called calorieking.com, and you can look there and see what is 100 grams of black beans supposed to be, and it's just gonna be something where you can verify and double check that it is the right amount of calories. But again, you don't need to overthink this too much. Remember, when it comes to all of this stuff, it's so much more about the big picture and roughly hitting these targets. You don't need to be super crazy, obsessive, and precise, because it's so much better that you're more general and consistent and actually follow it over a period of time than try to be obsessive and perfect and then get burnt out and overwhelmed. I've also included a PDF download here for you guys, which is a MyFitnessPal user guide. So everything in this video where I explain how to measure, how to track using MyFitnessPal, you're gonna find it in there as a resource for you to reference. Okay, so I'm just gonna walk you through actually preparing each one of these meals and show you how I use my digital kitchen scale, how I make sure I measure everything out, and then how I track it accurately in MyFitnessPal. So let's do it. All right, so first I'm gonna be preparing my protein oats. So I'm just gonna take the Tupperware container that I'm gonna be using to put the oats in, put that on top of our handy dandy digital kitchen scale, and I'm gonna hit the tare button so that it goes to 0 grams. And now everything that I put in here is gonna be measured properly. So I'm gonna be weighing out 80 grams of rolled oats. Okay, and obviously sometimes I might go over a little bit. I just pick out a few to get it to the right amount. All right, so I'm gonna add in all the other ingredients. Next, I'm gonna be using my protein powder. And so another great thing you can do with MyFitnessPal is there's the option where you can scan barcodes. So you click the add food button, you hit the barcode, and then you're gonna scan the picture of the barcode, and it's gonna bring up all the information for you. So you can do that instead of searching for foods in the database if the food you're using does have something that you can scan. But again, make sure that it does have the option for you to track to the gram. So I'm gonna switch it here to my serving size as 1 gram and number of servings as 30 because I'm gonna be doing 30 grams of this protein powder. All right, and again, just a few grams over. It's not a huge deal. You don't need to be this obsessive, but since I can see the actual amount, I like to make it precise. So I'm gonna be adding in my soy milk now. I'm gonna be adding in 250 grams of that. I spilled a little bit. And I already have some chopped strawberries, so I'm just gonna grab a handful of that, throw it in. You don't have to be too precise when you're weighing your fruit because obviously it's so good for you. It's not really like you can overeat it, but I do aim for about 50 grams of strawberries just because I know it's gonna be a good amount. So I got that in there. Okay, and I'm just gonna put in a teaspoon of chia seeds because why not? They're good to get some extra nutrition. So I'm gonna weigh out 5 grams of that. And then the last thing I'm gonna do is add in my banana. So I'm just gonna peel this and just slice it right here in my hand and add it in to the oats. All right, so as you can see, this is very full, but that is all the ingredients. They're all weighed out, so I know exactly for sure how much I'm having, and I have everything tracked to the gram in MyFitnessPal. So now I'm just gonna pop the lid on. And you know, I just like to shake it and then all the ingredients mix together and it's ready to go for the morning. All right, so I'm gonna be making a peanut sauce shrimp for dinner and I'm gonna just put on some brown rice to cook for my starchy carb on the side. All right, so rice is cooking. So now I'm just gonna put the shrimp in the pan and get it to marinate a little bit with the sauce. So again, pushing the tare button, setting it to 0 so that it's not weighing the pan. So now everything I put in the pan is going to be the exact weight of what it should be. Okay, so we got 400 grams, so this is gonna be enough for 2 meals. All right, so to make the sauce for the shrimp, I'm gonna be adding in a few ingredients here. So I've got sesame oil, and just because with oil, it's really easy to overshoot it if you pour it right into the pan. So I'm just gonna pour it out here into my lid and then add it in so that I'm measuring it to the right amount. All right, so next I'm gonna add in a tablespoon of honey per serving. And again, I'm just gonna use a spoon to weigh it out so that I don't overshoot it. All right, so I'm just gonna hit tare so that it goes back to 0. And now I'm gonna add in the natural peanut butter, which is really what makes this taste so good. And I'm just gonna be adding in some lime juice and a little bit of minced garlic, and then that's gonna be it. All right, so you saw how we measured everything out. So in the app, what I would do is I would go click on add food in my diary, and really important when you're putting in proteins or starchy carbohydrates, you wanna make sure you specify whether you're measuring them raw or cooked because it's gonna be totally different. So for this, I measured out the shrimp raw, and I pretty much always measure out all of my proteins raw. That's just the way I do it, but it doesn't really matter. You can measure it out raw or cooked, but obviously if you're gonna be putting in with a bunch of other stuff, you should measure it out raw. And then with my starchy carbs, like my rice, I always just let a bunch cook in one go, and then I measure out the amount of cooked rice that I'm gonna be eating with my food. So once the rice is cooked, I'm gonna be weighing out 150 grams of rice for my portion with my dinner. All right, so search a food, I'm gonna just search raw shrimp, and I'm gonna put it to 1 gram for the serving size, and then 200 for number of servings, because that's gonna be 200 grams. And then same thing with all the other ingredients. I'm gonna type in honey and put the G next to it, so I make sure that I pull one up that's gonna allow me to measure in grams. Serving size to 1 gram, and then number of servings is 20. With the peanut butter, I'm gonna type in peanut butter with a G, and then I'm gonna say 1 gram, and number of servings is gonna be 20 grams of peanut butter. And the last thing is the sesame oil, which is gonna be 7 milliliters. Milliliters or grams, it doesn't really matter, they are the exact same. It's just that milliliter is for a liquid, so sometimes you're gonna see that in here. So you can also use milliliters. It's the same as if it were measured with grams. And then I'm gonna go ahead and type in cooked brown rice so that I know that I'm gonna be putting in the cooked amount instead of the raw amount. All right, so I'm gonna set the serving size to 1 gram and do 150 servings because I'm having 150 grams of cooked brown rice. All right, so as you can see, I'm not adding in the vegetables, I'm not adding in the garlic or the lime juice, and the reason is just because those things are pretty much no calories at all, especially with your vegetables, non-starchy vegetables, so meaning all vegetables that aren't potatoes or things like that, like, you know, an avocado, which is actually a fruit. Those things are high in calories, so you have to track your calories for those things. But with this, non-starchy vegetables, you can't overeat it, so you don't really need to track it because it's not like you're gonna be going over on your broccoli calories, for example. So I'm not gonna be tracking that. I'm not gonna track the garlic or the lime juice because, I mean, garlic, again, you don't need to worry about the calories, there's so few. So the only things you need to track are all of the big stuff, but small things like non-starchy vegetables, garlic, herbs and spices, salt and pepper, stuff like that, you definitely don't need to measure and track that. So while that's cooking, I'm just gonna prepare my lunch bowl and show you how I measure all of that and add it into MyFitnessPal. Okay, so I'm gonna put my Tupperware container on the digital kitchen scale, make sure it's set to 0. So I already have a bunch of cooked quinoa, so I'm gonna weigh out 150 grams of that because that's how much I've already figured out in MyFitnessPal to make sure I'm gonna have enough of my macros for the day. And I'm also gonna measure out 150 grams of black beans, all right? And I'm gonna add in the feta cheese, so I'm gonna weigh out 30 grams of that. All right, and I'm just adding in 1 teaspoon of olive oil. So again, just to make sure I don't overshoot it, I'm gonna pour it into the cap, and then I'm gonna add it in. Perfect 5 grams, which is 1 teaspoon. So now I'm just gonna be adding in my veggies. So you can always use whatever you want. So I'm just gonna add a bunch of spinach. And again, I'm not weighing any of this. My Tupperware is still here, but I'm not actually measuring or weighing because you can't overeat things like tomatoes, spinach, and onions. So don't worry about measuring it or tracking it. Okay, so that is the bowl. I'm just gonna mix it all together now. So as you can see, it was really simple to put this together. I just kind of thought again of the main components of a meal and took starchy carbs, which was my cooked quinoa, and then black beans, which are also a protein for this meal. And then veggies, I just threw in some spinach, red onion, cherry tomato. And then for the fats, which is making the sauce, I added in olive oil, feta cheese, and then also some lemon to make it taste really good. Now I'm just gonna put the lid on this, pop it in the fridge, and that's also gonna be ready to go for tomorrow along with my oats. All right, the peanut sauce shrimp is done and it smells so good. All right, so I'm just gonna take my digital kitchen scale and I'm not gonna weigh out the actual shrimp. I'm just gonna eyeball that I'm only eating half of it. But if you wanted to, you could weigh out the entire cooked thing, see what the total amount cooked is, and then divide that by 2. But I think that that's just a little bit tedious and unnecessary. So instead, I'm just gonna eyeball it and make it look like it's 2 servings. All right, so you can see that's a lot of food because remember, it's not about starving yourself to get fit. You really do need to actually eat a lot. So now I'm gonna set the scale to 0, and now I'm gonna just spoon out 150 grams of cooked brown rice from my pot of cooked rice here. Because remember, I like to just always do my starchy carbs all in one go, and then I just measure out the amount I need, which obviously also saves me a lot of time prepping because I can just bulk prepare all of my carbs. All right, so that is 150 grams of rice. As you can see, it is a lot because you need to have a lot of food to get fit. All right, Fit Fam, so that is it. That's a full day of eating for me. That is 100% on track with my macros, and now you know how to measure things properly and how to track things properly in MyFitnessPal. So you're gonna see it's going to make it so easy, so guaranteed that you do reach your fitness goals very quickly following this method. And remember, don't obsess over it too much. Don't get crazy about the numbers. They're not going to make or break your success. It's so much more about consistently eating this way, consistently training over several months and several years even. So just keep doing your best. You're gonna get the hang of it very quickly with more practice. All right, thanks so much for joining me. Now go track your macros and smash your goals.